Hello there.
Hello there. How are you?
Well, now talk about a background. That's the best.
Well, you gotta reflect on Main Street all the time, right?
Oh,
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm surprised our paths have not crossed over the years before, but you
the
never
world
know.
is a big place.
It, it is. It
Okay.
is.
Um, Before we start, on my show, the more the guest talks, the better the show. And we'll start off by asking you a little bit about your personal background, a little bit about Alignable, and then finally a website, and then we'll go from there.
Sounds wonderful.
Okay. Uh,
Sounds good.
All right. I just want to.
Look forward to it.
Okay. I just want to say. Um, just, okay. Let's 5 seconds for the engineer, and then we'll begin.
Sounds good.
Eric Groves. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
You got that correctly.
Okay. Don Mazzella here with another edition of Small Business Digest, and we have a very interesting guest. As he said, we haven't met over the years, but I've known about him for a long time. Eric Groves, he's president of Alignable. He's sitting there in a wonderful location, and we welcome him to the program. How you doing, Eric?
I'm doing well, Don. Thanks so much for inviting me to your show.
Well, as we ask all our guests, first tell us a little bit of your personal background, then a little bit about your company, and finally a website before we do anything else.
Sounds great. Well, my background, I've been in the small business space for going on 30 years now. Prior to co-founding Alignable, which I'll talk about in a minute, I was one of the founding executives at Constant Contact for 10 and a half years. And then prior to that was in a database company called Info USA that was working with a lot of small businesses. So been involved in the small business economy in many ways for a long time. And then while I was at Constant Contact, I was really focusing on, trying to think of ways to help small business owners find and um, generate new customers for their business. And that was sort of the onus behind why we created Alignable. One of the things that we noticed was that small business owners, if you ask them what their best source of new customers was, they would say, word of mouth marketing, or referrals. And when you started to think about that and say, well, how do you get more word of mouth referrals? You realize it's not a form of advertising. You can't simply put money in and get more out. And so we sort of broke down that problem and said, well, what is it about word of mouth? And it's the fact that it's people that you've established relationships with being willing to put their own reputation on the line for you and your business. And that's having a killer network and staying on top of mind with that network. And the best people for that network are other business owners who also share the same challenges you do and serve the same customers. And so that was sort of why we created Alignable. Alignable is now a network with over 6.5 million small businesses across North America, coming to the platform to connect, build relationships, explore new avenues for their business, and leverage those relationships to grow, whether it's to acquire new customers or find solutions for their business. And it's a free platform to join. And basically, 100,000 plus small business owners join every month. And they can join by just going to Alignable, which is Alignable, ALIGNABLE.com, and set up a free account, create a profile for their business, add all of the people that they know into their network, and then start the process of connecting and building relationships with new people. So how did I do on hitting all of your topics?
That that's the way it should be.
There you
Well,
go.
well, you have some news for us. Um,
Yeah, well, since March of 2020, we've been collecting data on the impact of the COVID crisis on the small business economy. And I guess it all harkens back to my undergraduate days as an econ major. We were fascinated to understand what was going to happen during this pandemic to the small business economy. How would it be impacted? How would it recover? And so we started a process of collecting data and reporting on that data at first weekly. And then over time, we've sort of built it into a monthly report that we've been creating. And it's been absolutely fascinating to track, at the height of the impact, over 90% of small businesses were saying that they were significantly impacted by the COVID crisis. And, we've watched that sort of ebb and flow over time, and it kind of resurged last winter. And then finally, now what we've seen is the impact level hitting its lowest rate since March of 2020, which is super encouraging. But throughout that time, we've tracked what their greatest concerns have been, what their challenges have been. And that's all what we've packaged up in this report. And love to share some of those insights with you if that would be helpful to your audience.
that's why you're here. Please be.
All right, we'll take it away. So, what have we learned? Well, we've learned, we sort of tracked as businesses opened back up. And in the past couple of months, what we've seen is a significant lift in the number of businesses that reopened fully. Many were open partially or with ancillary services, but we've seen a nice 2 months ago, we saw a nice increase in the percentage of businesses that had said that they're now fully reopened. 2 months ago, we were really concerned because they were open, but what we weren't seeing was the percentage of their customers and their revenues actually starting to return. And so this past month, what we were super interested to see was, had that trend changed? And in fact, it did. We started to see a really positive shift in both the revenues and the customers flowing back to small businesses. At the same time, we saw a number of new concerns starting to come to the surface, and if you look back in time, the greatest concerns were, having enough cash to get through the crisis. Was the government going to close down my business again? Was I going to have financial resources to get through? And what we saw most recently was a shift in concern about the overall economics of their business. So what they've seen is significant challenges accessing the supply chain for the products and services that they need to run their business, as well as inflation in the cost associated with the things that they're looking to buy. So, all of a sudden what you start to see is the margins of these businesses who are trying to recover getting squashed due to those increased costs. Now, we're hoping that the inflationary impact in the supply chain starts to kind of calm down as the supply chain opens up. But that takes me to the other piece of the equation, which was hiring. And what we saw in the hiring side of things was a significant challenge for small businesses to attract and retain their employees. And so they're having to pay more and more on an hourly basis just to get the employees to come in the door. And again, that impacts their margins and their ability to recover. So those are all of the things that we're tracking right now. We're hoping to see some of the hiring challenges start to get better. We're hoping that as the stimulus package starts to wind down, that more people return to the hourly workforce. But we've yet to see that at this point. So that's what we're looking for in the coming months.
Well, I have several questions. One of them that came up in just the program I did a couple of hours ago. Do you think the impact of government subsidies to the unemployment has affected the hiring process?
Well, it's certainly, listening to what we're seeing from our small business owners, is they seem to think that's been a significant impact. I think it was two things working in concert with each other. well, maybe more than two, but the two big ones were for a lot of these businesses that were hiring hourly employees. The unemployment benefits certainly exacerbated the problem. But I think you take that in a lot of places, like where I am I'm on Cape Cod, down in Massachusetts, and talking to a lot of the business owners here, they're also struggling because of a lot of the visa situation, where a lot of workers would come, seasonally from other countries to the United States and work on an hourly basis in a lot of the hospitality industry here. And those people simply, for COVID reasons or any other reasons, haven't been able to come to the country. And so there's sort of this, dual effect of, less people available from the US population and less people coming in. And those two things converging have really caused an enormous impact on these folks.
Well, you have a certain, I think I view it as a service that enables people to, well, um, how should we say, I have a senior moment, to reach out to other people. But
Mm-hmm.
during the COVID pandemic, the Rotaries weren't meeting, the Kiwanis weren't meeting. They, from what I heard, they turned a lot to your company to expand it. Um, now that the Rotaries are back in business, have you seen a decline, or you actually seen an increase in your people using your service?
So the answer is it's continued to grow quite nicely. What we've seen is a change in how they're using the service. You're exactly spot on. For a lot of those hyper local networking events, or just coming together as a local business community, many of those aspects are now shifting to more of a hybrid model, where some are coming virtually and some are coming in person. And I think there's an enormous desire of people to come together in person. The great news is that they can all use Alignable to coordinate those events and to find new people within the community to join their events. So there's still a lot of use around that. In addition, what we're finding is that throughout the COVID crisis, we were able to create what we call our industry groups, which basically allow people across a broad geography to talk to each other. And so we had one group of florists. They called themselves the Florist Survival Group, where they were florists, but across North America. And they were literally talking to each other on a regular basis and helping each other think of creative ideas on ways that they could sustain their businesses. So, I think you've seen an enormous amount of innovation caused during the COVID crisis, where it brought a whole bunch of people together on Alignable. They found ways to interact to replace what they were doing locally, but they've also augmented that with new ways and new people to meet from across the country. So, and then we're still seeing a lot of them, a little as this COVID resurgence is happening, a lot of them still shifting back to do their meetups and their stuff online. So we have a new online live event service, so they can just within their group launch a live event and be able to talk to each other on at any point in time when they want to.
Well, leads me to the next question. Do you think um, people are arguing that up to 40% of American small businesses will not reopen fully after this pandemic? Do you see that happening, or do you see any figures?
Well, so our latest report, I think, had it at 65% were already reopened. So that, let's see, fully reopened status, 75%. So I think we're past that number. What we're going to see is a lot of changing businesses, right? We're going to see businesses changing the way that they do business. But small business owners are entrepreneurs. They're going to find a way to change their business to deliver their services however they can, because it's their livelihood. So while, if you were to just go back in time, back to, I think it was sort of February or March, where we had 40% of the businesses reopened, we've seen a massive surge over the last 6 months where that's now north of 75. So it's super encouraging. But you're always going to see a lot of transformation when it comes to the small business owners because they're built to adapt and evolve.
Well, the point is, uh, the next point I'd ask you is, the argument is if you survive to your fifth year, you're as a small business, you're generally going to survive. But we saw some figures from one bank that seemed to indicate that businesses under 2 years were really floundering in this period. Have you seen? Have you broken down any of your studies to indicate is it older companies surviving and
Well, it really comes down to what industry and that they're in, because there were many industries that actually did well during COVID. Like you think just real estate agents, right? In the real estate market boom, and people that were in essential services type roles. The businesses that were most hardest hit were those that were in personal services and hospitality. And those businesses, in a hospitality industry, there's a fairly high turnover rate already. So we would anticipate to have seen that continue and those businesses sort of struggle and have to reform themselves. The other thing that was very interesting, and Karen Mills pointed this out to us, Karen was the head of the Small Business Administration under President Obama. And she had done a bunch of research where restaurants had on average about 28 or 30 days of cash on hand at any given point in time. And so when you think about what we've been through for the last 16 months and only having 30 days of cash on hand, you can see that businesses that were naturally more highly leveraged because they had large, plant in terms of kitchens and things like that, were really feeling an enormous amount of strain due to them not being able to be open. And, the PPP stuff was a good short-term bridge. But, each one of those tranches was really only made to span an 8-week period in terms of your employment costs. Well, that's fine if, the storm only lasted for 8 weeks, but when it goes on to 16 months, it's a whole different story. So, many of these businesses like restaurants, and then folks in the hospitality industry had been, very much struggling. The good news is that, as people got vaccinated and started to return, many people wanted to be in person and go back to restaurants and their locally owned businesses. And, that's the shot in the arm they need, as long as they can, find a way to get the margins back on the services that they're providing.
well,
A
just
long-winded answer to your question. Sorry.
the more the guest talks, the better the program. Believe
There you
me.
go.
Again, another question that came up. There's someone sent across a report that said that the pandemic affected women business owners harder than men. Of course, that's like the old line. Anyway, do you have any figures to indicate breaking down male, female, anything that because that's going to be the hot area.
Yep. So what we did do, and we did track both minority-owned business status, women-owned business status, veteran-owned business status, and what we saw was that the thing that most affected the minority-owned businesses and the women-owned businesses was their access to capital. And not necessarily that their businesses got hit worse by COVID, but that the resources available to them to sustain themselves through COVID were less. And so we actually were able to track on the initial round of PPP loans that minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses were getting rejected for PPP loans at 2x, almost 2x the amount of non-women-owned or minority-owned businesses. So, therein is the challenge, is that the money that was put out by the government was not sort of equitably distributed. It went to other businesses, which certainly put those businesses in a better position to survive.
Yes. That's very interesting. It's something that I think when people really study this area, they're going to find out because then it seems that a lot of that money went to companies that really didn't need the money as much as other companies that did. But anyway, um,
Yeah, absolutely.
well, let's talk a little bit about how your company, how Alignable works. You say I come in. I'm a new small business owner. I've been around for 3 or 4 years, and I manufacture widgets.
Hmm.
You know, widgets haven't been manufactured in almost 200 years, but what the heck? Uh, um, anyway, uh, what do I do? Fill out a form. Tell us how it works and why someone in our audience should join.
Yeah, sure. So, there's a couple of data points that are super interesting. So, roughly 80% of small businesses' customers come from a fairly tight geography. So, say 5, 10 miles around the business. And there are businesses that are more regional and national. But if you think about that as sort of the sphere of influence that matters most as a small business owner, it's super important to make connections and build relationships with the people inside your geography. And so when you join Alignable, what you'll do is you'll come in and you'll create a profile. And then what we'll do is we'll introduce you and your business to all of the business owners in that community. You also have the ability to take your address book and run it against our member list and instantly see who are all the business owners on Alignable that you already know. The great thing about that is it'll find business owners not only in your area, but maybe you have a supplier across the country, or other businesses that you work with that are in another state. All of those connections get made for you, and you sort of instantly have a network that you can work with. The neat thing about word of mouth referrals is that it's mouths but also words, right? So what we enable you to do is to post things about you and your business that are happening that you want other people to know about. So if you're running a promotion, you're having an event, you've got a new product or service you want people to know about, you just go onto the platform, you post it, and we automatically tell everybody in your network, hey, here's Don. Don's got this new service that he's offering, and he wants to make sure that you know about it so that you can share it with other people that you think might be interested. You can also post those type of things to your community. So you can post, events, promotions, all kinds of things, jobs if you're looking to hire. You can ask for referrals. I need a new plumber. Does anybody know anybody that would be good to work with? And the community then jumps in and helps you get the word out or find resources for you and your business. So that's really the main sort of cycle of what people do when they come on. Is they come in, they establish their network with people they already know, they use the platform to introduce themselves to people that they want to meet, whether it's in their community, their industry, and then they just use the platform as an ongoing sort of discussion generator where they can share information with each other. And that results in business referrals, supplier referrals, and all of that coming together. And then the other thing that's really fascinating are these groups that you can join. So we have women-owned business owners in California. That's a group that you can join. We have people who are interested in cash flow management as a group that they can all get together and they can just talk to each other. And it really solves the pain point of being alone as a business owner, right? I mean, it's one of the things, if you've ever worked at a large corporation, that you knew was power, right? If I had a question about marketing, I could always go talk to the VP of marketing or whatever. Well, as a business owner, by yourself, you don't have those resources. And the cool thing about joining Alignable is you instantly have access to 6.5 million people just like you that have all solved the same problems, that would love to help you. And it's just a really thoughtful community of people helping each other be successful and get through challenging times.
We're talking with Eric Groves. He's president of Alignable. Eric, we only have a few minutes left, so what would you like to leave our audience with?
Well, I think a couple of things. Number one is to realize that they're not alone, and that getting rid of that burden by finding your peers and being able to connect and collaborate is really a cathartic experience. So I invite you to come and join the community and join the discussion. I think that it's been a very challenging couple of years as a small business owner. But the interesting thing behind the scenes is we're seeing a massive amount of innovation. We're starting to see companies adjust the products and services that they are creating to make it easier for small business owners. Whether it's a company that's really helping you tap into hourly employees or changing the way that they're providing access to capital, all of these things ultimately are going to make it easier to be more successful as a small business owner. And then I think the last thing that I'd love to leave everybody with is this notion of we're all part of one big Main Street, and where we spend our money matters. You spend $100 on a big website like Amazon, and less than $1 of what you spend flows back into your community. You spend that same $100 at a locally owned business, and what happens is 50-60% of what you're spending stays within the community and circulates within the community in the form of rent, taxes, hourly employees, supplies that are purchased. It really is an investment back in your own community, which allows us to do the things that we love to keep our communities really thriving. And so I think the last message to everybody is to really think about where you're spending your money and realize that you can buy that same $100 thing right downtown at the local business. And by doing so, it really has an enormous impact on the community. So I think that's the most important thing for everybody to take home and think about. We're all part of one big Main Street. Let's keep our money local.
That is an absolutely great thought, Eric. That really is.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for joining us. It's been
It's an absolute pleasure. And thanks you for letting me ramble on. I could keep going for hours.
Like I say, it's better when the guest talks. Have a great day and great wherever you are on Main Street.
Thank you. Thanks, Don. Have a great day yourself.